Hi there, everyone. It's me, Bennie, and welcome to another day in Bennie's world. I'm super excited you're here with me because every single day brings a new adventure, and today's story is definitely one of my funniest ever. Before I get started, let me just say that Bennie's world is a place where absolutely anything can happen. One day I might be flying around on a magic carpet, and the next day I might be baking the biggest chocolate cake in my kitchen. My world is full of surprises, laughter, and all kinds of silly mishaps, so get ready for a delightful journey. Now, let me tell you about how my morning started. I woke up feeling pretty fantastic, ready to put on my favorite polka dot socks and my pair of comfy sneakers so I could go outside and hop around like a grasshopper. I love starting my days with a hop, skip, and a jump because it makes me feel bouncy and cheerful, almost like I'm made of rubber bands. So I hopped out of bed, scrambled around to find my socks, tugged them onto my feet, and then reached for my sneakers. That's when I noticed something very strange. Where was my right shoe? I looked beside my bed where I usually leave my shoes in a neat little row. Nothing there. So I looked under my bed, thinking maybe it slid under during the night. No shoe. I checked my closet next. Sometimes I get a little too tidy, and I put my shoes in the closet without remembering, but it wasn't there either. Now, normally when I can't find something, I do a quick search, and it usually turns up somewhere silly, like behind the curtains or under a couch cushion. But I had a feeling this might be more challenging than usual. One of the most important things about starting my day is making sure my shoes match. If I go out into the world wearing one shoe and one flip-flop, I might cause a commotion. People would look at me funny, and Toby, he's my pet dog, by the way, might think I was holding a shoe just out of his reach for fun. So I was determined to find my missing sneaker. No shoe left behind, that's my motto. So I decided to do a full-scale search of my house. My first stop was the closet. Logically, that's where shoes are supposed to be, right? I scoured every corner, pushing aside boxes of old toys, rummaging under folded blankets, and even double-checking the pockets of my coats, just in case it somehow got lodged in there. Nothing. It was like my shoe had vanished into thin air. After the closet, I went to the bathroom. Okay, I know what you're thinking. Bennie, why would your shoe be in the bathroom? And you'd be absolutely right to ask, but you never know with me. Sometimes I get creative while I'm brushing my teeth, and I could have carried my shoe in there to practice balancing it on my head. I'm always coming up with wacky ideas, so I had to check. But it definitely wasn't on the bathroom counter, not in the sink, and certainly not in the bathtub. I did find a rubber ducky I thought I'd lost 2 weeks ago, though, so it wasn't a total waste of time. Then I thought, what if it's in the kitchen? Sometimes I wander into the kitchen while I'm thinking about the world's biggest sandwiches, peanut butter and jelly towers, anyone? Maybe I absent-mindedly left my shoe near the fridge, but nope, it wasn't next to the fridge or under the table. I even checked the inside of my giant soup pot just in case. But I found nothing but a single spaghetti noodle that must have escaped dinner the night before. I was starting to get worried. I'd spent what felt like an hour rummaging around, popping my head into every room. My shoe was nowhere to be seen. That's when I remembered Toby's doghouse. Toby loves to sneak off with anything that smells interesting, and a shoe definitely smells interesting, to a dog at least. So I dashed outside to Toby's little doghouse, where he naps and dreams of chasing squirrels all day. I carefully peeked inside, expecting to see my sneaker next to Toby's squeaky toy and a half-chewed tennis ball. But guess what? No shoe. Toby blinked at me like he was just as surprised as I was that the shoe wasn't in there. Or maybe he was disappointed I didn't bring him a tasty treat. Either way, my shoe was clearly not with Toby. By now, I was scratching my head, trying to piece together the mystery of the disappearing sneaker. Well, I said to myself. If it's not in the closet, not in the bathroom, not in the kitchen, and not in Toby's doghouse, maybe it's behind the couch. Because I do tend to lose things behind the couch, like that time I lost an entire plate of cookies and found them a week later. Don't even ask how that happened. Anyway, I pushed the couch away from the wall with all my might, grunting and groaning a bit because that couch is heavy. I glanced behind it, and there were a few dust bunnies, one of Toby's squeaky toys, and a couple of crayons from my last coloring adventure, but no shoe. So I walked around the house in a circle, thinking about all the possible places a shoe could go. It's not like it can walk away on its own, right? Unless I've invented some magical walking shoe in my sleep, which would be pretty hilarious, or maybe a little scary, but that's not likely. At this point, I started to imagine my life with only one shoe. Could I really go outside like that? Would my friends laugh, or would they think I was starting a cool new fashion trend? My right foot might get jealous of all the cozy comfort my left foot was enjoying, or my left foot might get tired of always carrying the shoe. I felt a funny wobble just thinking about it. And what about the weather? When it's cold, one foot would be toasty and the other would be shivering. When it's hot, one foot would be breathing in fresh air while the other might get a bit sweaty. While I was lost in these thoughts, I decided to grab a snack, because searching for a lost shoe can be exhausting. I opened the pantry, hoping maybe I'd left my shoe among the cereal boxes. No luck, of course, but I found some yummy crackers to munch on. Toby was watching me carefully, probably wondering if I was going to share. I did give him one cracker because I felt bad for disturbing his doghouse search earlier. He wagged his tail, which made me smile a bit, but I still had a growing worry in my belly. Where in the wide world was my shoe? I plopped down on the couch I'd just moved, stretching my sock-covered feet in front of me, and thought about my next step. Maybe I could try to think like a shoe. If I were a missing shoe, where would I hide? Or maybe I could try being a detective. Detective Bennie. I pictured myself in a long coat carrying a magnifying glass, carefully searching for clues. I imagined Toby as my trusty sidekick, wearing a little detective hat and sniffing around for any sign of a shoe. But so far, even my most brilliant detective skills hadn't paid off, and Toby seemed more interested in nibbling on his cracker than sniffing for clues. After a while, I realized I needed a new plan. I decided to retrace my steps from yesterday. That's always a good strategy, right? I remembered coming home after a day of playing hide-and-seek at the park. I kicked off both shoes by the front door, I was sure of it. Then I ran to the kitchen to grab a glass of lemonade. After that, Toby barked at me to go outside and we played fetch for a while. Then I came back in, took a quick shower, changed into pajamas, and hopped into bed. Somewhere in that sequence, my shoe disappeared, but I couldn't remember picking it up. Why would I only pick up one shoe and not the other? It didn't make sense. Still, I had to keep an open mind. Maybe I accidentally tossed it somewhere, or maybe Toby tried to help put it away. But Toby's doghouse was already checked. It was baffling. And that's where we are, my friends. Me, Bennie, missing one shoe, feeling a bit defeated. But let me tell you, if there's one thing I know about Bennie's world, it's that solutions often pop up in the most unexpected ways. I just had to keep looking, keep thinking, and keep believing that I'd find my shoe. Because one shoe, Bennie, just doesn't have the same ring to it, you know? Anyway, there I was, sitting on the couch with my big detective thinking cap on, and Toby curled up at my feet. I gently nudged Toby with my toe and said, "Toby, buddy, where do you think that shoe of mine wandered off to?" Toby just cocked his head to the side as if to say, "Beats me." Sometimes I wish dogs could talk, but maybe Toby was trying to tell me something in his own doggy way. He hopped off the couch and ran in circles for a second. I followed him, hoping he had a lead, but he just ended up in front of his food bowl, which was empty. Typical Toby. So I refilled Toby's bowl and decided to take a walk around the house again. Not literally a walk, because I only had one shoe, but more like a soft shuffle. As I waddled around, trying not to let my sock get dirty on the floor, I couldn't help but burst into laughter. I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the hallway mirror, one sneaker on my left foot, a single polka dot sock on my right foot, and realized I looked pretty ridiculous. That's when the silly side of me kicked in, and I started hobbling around like a penguin just for the fun of it. I can't lie, the idea of a one-shoe life was starting to seem strangely amusing. I imagined going to the grocery store clomping around with my one sneaker while everyone else had two. Maybe I'd become famous as the one-shoe wonder. People might point and whisper, "Hey, there goes Bennie, he's got a fascinating new style. Maybe it'll catch on." And in my daydream I'd wave at everyone and say, "Yes, indeed, one shoe is the future of fashion." Of course, there's also the slightly less glamorous side of only having one shoe. Like, how would I run around outside? The ground can be rough, and there might be pebbles or pointy sticks. And in winter, that one foot would freeze if I dared step outside without protection. Then in summer, that same foot could get really sweaty on the hot ground. Yikes! But in Benny's world, we're all about finding the fun, even in tough situations, so I tried not to worry too much. Still, the problem remained. I wanted my second shoe back. No matter how much I tried to make light of it, the truth was that I missed my comfy sneaker, so I decided to be systematic. I wrote down a list of all the rooms in my house: bedroom, bathroom, closet, kitchen, living room, basement, attic, and even the weird little storage space under the stairs. Then I wrote down the places I'd checked: bedroom, yes; bathroom, yes; closet, yes; kitchen, yes; living room, basically yes. The basement and attic I hadn't really explored yet, and the storage space under the stairs was easy to forget about. So I started with the basement. It's not really scary, just a bit dimly lit, and it smells kind of musty sometimes. I keep a bunch of boxes down there filled with old costumes, decorations, and who knows what else. If my shoe somehow got mixed in with the basement clutter, it could be a while before I found it. But I pushed on, determined to solve the case. I flicked on the light, carefully tiptoed down the stairs so I wouldn't stub my sock foot, and scanned the room. Boxes everywhere. I opened a few boxes, rummaging around. One was full of Halloween masks and wigs. I tried on a bright green wig for a second just to lighten the mood, but Toby gave me a look that said, "Okay, Benny, focus on the shoe." So I took off the wig and carried on. Another box had old board games, still no shoe. A third box was just stuffed with winter clothes, like gloves and scarves. No shoe there, though I did find a pair of fuzzy mittens I thought I'd lost last winter. That was nice, but it wasn't my missing sneaker. After a thorough search, I couldn't find the shoe in the basement. I trudged back upstairs, feeling a little defeated. Then I remembered the attic. The attic is usually where I keep holiday decorations, like the plastic pumpkins for Halloween, or the twinkling lights for the holidays. But I couldn't imagine why my shoe would end up there. I hardly ever go into the attic unless it's a special occasion. Still, I had to check, so I climbed the ladder, pushing open the creaky attic door. A little bit of dust and a few cobwebs greeted me, but I was on a mission. I poked around, shining my flashlight in corners, moving aside old boxes of ornaments, checking behind the artificial Christmas tree, but it became pretty clear that the shoe was not in the attic either. I sat down on an old trunk, shaking my head. This was starting to feel hopeless. I crawled back down, my sock now covered in a fine layer of dust. "Well, that's another spot checked off the list," I muttered to myself. I was starting to think maybe I'd lost the shoe outside somewhere, but I specifically remembered taking them off inside, so that didn't make a lot of sense. Toby trotted along beside me, probably hoping I'd do something more fun than rummage through boxes. Then I had another idea, the storage space under the stairs. Sometimes I toss random things in there when I'm cleaning up quickly. Maybe I threw my shoe in there without realizing it. It wasn't a very neat approach, but hey, sometimes I get in a hurry. So I pulled open the little door under the staircase and peered in. It was dark, so I used my flashlight again. Right away I saw a lot of old sports equipment I'd almost forgotten about. Roller skates, a basketball, a jump rope. I even spotted a big inflatable unicorn float that I used once for a summer pool party. I started pushing these items aside, rummaging around. I got so far in that Toby couldn't fit anymore. He just watched me from the doorway, wagging his tail as if to say, "Keep going, Bennie. You can do it." I found some dusty tennis rackets, a soccer ball, and a random winter boot that definitely wasn't my sneaker. I sighed. It didn't look like my missing shoe was in there. Slowly I backed out, wriggling around the sports gear. By the time I finished, I was feeling pretty exhausted. I'd looked in every logical place and even some illogical ones. I almost felt like giving up. Maybe I was meant to have just one shoe today. I glanced at my watch and realized lunchtime had come and gone. "No wonder I'm hungry," I said. "I've been crawling around everywhere, searching for that silly shoe." So I shuffled into the kitchen, left foot in a sneaker, right foot in a sock, and made myself a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Toby got a little snack too, because I can't resist his puppy dog eyes. As I ate, I found myself thinking about the weird possibility that maybe I'd thrown the shoe out with the trash, but that would be so out of character for me. I love my shoes, especially my comfy sneakers. I felt a little wave of panic. What if that's exactly what happened and my shoe was gone forever? I tried to stay calm. "Don't panic, Bennie," I told myself. "There's got to be an explanation." After lunch, I felt a bit more energetic, so I decided to do one last pass through each room, scanning them systematically. I started in my bedroom again. I looked under the bed, just dust bunnies. I checked behind my dresser, just lost socks and a pencil. Then I moved to the bathroom, and even though I'd already checked thoroughly, I peeked behind the shower curtain just in case. Nope, no shoe. Next was the living room. I lifted every cushion on the couch and even patted them down, but all I found was a few coins. The kitchen was next. I opened every cabinet, even the ones way up high, but there was no sign of my shoe. I paused to get a drink of water, feeling a little defeated once more. Then, in a burst of inspiration, I thought of the dishwasher. But I laughed at myself. Why on earth would my shoe be in the dishwasher? That sounded completely ridiculous, although it did jog my memory a tiny bit. Something about washing shoes, but that's silly, isn't it? I couldn't recall exactly. Still, the thought of finding my shoe in the dishwasher made me chuckle. "It's worth a shot," I said to Toby, who was busy sniffing the kitchen floor for crumbs. So I walked over to the dishwasher and pulled open the door, not really expecting to see anything but the usual plates and utensils. But oh my goodness, would you believe what I saw? Right there on the bottom rack, nestled between a couple of bowls and a spatula, was my missing sneaker, my right shoe. I let out a gasp that probably echoed around the entire kitchen. My shoe! I practically jumped for joy, which made Toby jump too. I reached in and carefully lifted my sneaker out, looking at it as if it were a long-lost friend. "What in the world are you doing in there?" I asked the shoe, as if it might answer back. Of course it stayed silent, but I could practically hear it saying, "You put me here, remember?" That's when it hit me. I'd had this big idea a couple of days ago. I was curious about washing one shoe in the washing machine and the other in the dishwasher, just to see which one would end up cleaner. It was one of those goofy experiments I sometimes do because, hey, life is all about learning and trying new things, right? I must have started the experiment, gotten distracted, and totally forgotten. I washed the left shoe in the washing machine and must have taken it out and dried it, but never took the right shoe out of the dishwasher. Instead, I just ran the dishwasher like normal, and when it was done, I never opened it to see what was inside. So my poor sneaker was just sitting there, squeaky clean, waiting for me to remember. I laughed so hard I nearly toppled over. Toby barked, probably wondering why I was laughing into a sneaker. I patted him on the head, ruffled his ears, and said, "It was in the dishwasher, Toby. Can you believe that?" Toby just wagged his tail, no doubt relieved that this whole shoe mystery was finally solved. Or maybe he just wanted a chance to chew on the newly clean sneaker. I turned off the dishwasher, realizing that I'd left it slightly ajar after I took out my shoe. Then I inspected the sneaker. It looked surprisingly good. Not too soggy, not too smelly, and definitely not covered in tomato sauce or anything like that. I gave it a little sniff, and it smelled kind of like soap. "Well, I guess the dishwasher does a decent job on shoes," I said with a grin. Maybe my left shoe in the washing machine and my right shoe in the dishwasher would be an interesting comparison, but at that moment I was just happy to have them both back. I hustled over to my bedroom, laughing at how much time I'd spent searching all the usual spots when the answer had been hiding in plain sight. Well, not exactly plain sight, but in a place I never expected to find a shoe. I sat down and slipped on the right sneaker. It felt extra clean, like it had just taken a shower. Then I tied my laces, stood up, and hopped around to test it out. It felt perfect. No wobble, no uneven gait, just the regular bounce in my step that comes from wearing my favorite shoes. I breathed a huge sigh of relief. I was back to two-shoe Bennie, ready to take on the world with even steps and comfortable feet. I felt like throwing a tiny celebration. Toby seemed to sense my happiness and started wagging his tail so hard his entire backside wiggled. I gave him a scratch behind the ears and said, "Thanks for putting up with my detective adventure, Toby. Maybe next time remind me that my ideas can be a little out there." Toby just licked my hand, which I took as a sign of agreement, but the discovery of the shoe wasn't the end of my day. Oh no, I still had the whole rest of my afternoon and evening ahead of me. And let me tell you, finding that shoe made me realize something very important. Sometimes the answer to a big problem can be in the most unexpected place. It also reminded me that it's okay to take a breather and think about things from a different angle. If I'd stopped to consider my own wacky experiments earlier, I might have remembered the dishwasher. Instead, I spent hours searching behind couches and rummaging through the basement. Of course, the journey was still full of fun discoveries, like the rubber ducky in the bathroom, the fuzzy mittens in the basement, and all those random sports items under the stairs. So I guess that just goes to show that even if you don't find what you're looking for right away, you might find some other neat things along the way. That's the magic of exploring, even if you're just exploring your own house. After my triumphant reunion with my right sneaker, I pranced around the living room for a while, tapping my toes on the carpet just to savor the sensation of wearing two shoes again. It felt marvelous, like my feet were at last reunited after a brief but dramatic separation. I even did a little dance, spinning and twirling, while Toby chased his tail in pure excitement. In Bennie's world, small victories can feel like the biggest celebrations. I started to think about how different the day might have been if I had never found my shoe. Would I really have embraced the one-shoe life? I pictured myself going outside to greet neighbors with just one foot covered and the other foot bravely bare except for a sock. Kids in the neighborhood might have giggled, or maybe they'd ask me if I was planning to hop everywhere. Perhaps I could have bought another pair of shoes and worn one from that pair, leaving two mismatched single shoes. Then I'd look like a walking shoe shop. The thought made me giggle, but even if it would have been silly, I realized that not having one of my shoes might have taught me some valuable lessons. For instance, I'd definitely be more mindful the next time I get a kooky idea, like washing my shoes and different appliances. And I learned just how much I appreciate having both my feet fully equipped with footwear. Sometimes it's easy to take simple things for granted, like the fact that I usually have 2 shoes to wear. Losing one shoe, even temporarily, reminded me how lucky I am to have them. Of course, I didn't want to end my day just sitting around. I looked at Toby and said, "Hey, buddy, how about we celebrate by going for a walk? A real walk, not just me hopping around indoors." Toby's ears perked up instantly. Going for a walk is his absolute favorite activity, aside from maybe snack time. So I grabbed his leash, slipped into my newly reunited sneakers, and headed out the door. The sunshine felt warm on my skin, and a gentle breeze ruffled my hair. I whistled as Toby and I strolled down the sidewalk. Everything felt brighter and more cheerful now that the missing shoe was no longer a problem. I passed a few neighbors out watering their plants or walking their own dogs, and I happily told them the short version of my shoe saga. "It was in the dishwasher," I exclaimed, and they all gave me puzzled smiles. One neighbor said, "Only you, Bennie, only you," which made me chuckle. Toby wagged his tail proudly, as though he had played a major role in solving the case. Honestly, I couldn't blame him for wanting some credit. He'd been along for the whole wild ride, witnessing my frantic searching in every corner of the house. He might not have sniffed out the actual location, but he was definitely moral support. After a leisurely circuit of the neighborhood, we came back home, feeling content and ready for the next adventure Bennie's world would offer. Once inside, I realized it was nearly afternoon snack time, and after everything I'd been through, I felt like making something extra special. I rummaged around in the fridge, carefully this time so I wouldn't lose anything else, and decided to whip up some fruit smoothies. Toby, of course, got his own dog-friendly version with just a bit of banana and plain yogurt. We sat together on the porch, sipping and slurping. Well, Toby mostly slurped, enjoying the weather and thinking about how silly life can be sometimes. I thought about telling the entire story to my friends later. I imagined their reactions. "Bennie, how could you forget your shoe in the dishwasher? That's hilarious." Or maybe they'd say, "You mean you actually put your shoe in the dishwasher on purpose?" And I would grin and nod proudly, explaining my big plan to test which cleaning method was better. Some might call it strange, but I prefer to call it scientific curiosity. In Bennie's world, you never know what experiments might lead to interesting discoveries. As the evening rolled in, I decided it was the perfect time for a bit of creativity. I love to paint, especially when I'm feeling inspired, so I grabbed my paints and brushes, set up a little easel in the living room, and began to paint a picture of a funny scene, me wearing just one shoe, standing next to a dishwasher that had the other shoe inside. I added bright colors, a big silly grin on my face, and Toby peeking out from behind the door. Every stroke of the brush reminded me of the day's events, and I couldn't help but laugh. When I finished, I took a step back to admire my work. It perfectly captured the goofiness of the situation, right down to the soapy bubbles on the missing shoe. "I might hang this on the wall," I told Toby. He blinked at me, which I took as approval. Then I cleaned my brushes and put away my paints, humming a little tune about dishwashers and missing shoes. After that, I settled onto the couch with a good book. I felt like I deserved a bit of relaxation, but it was hard to concentrate on the story I was reading because my mind kept drifting back to the missing shoe incident. I found myself rewriting the events in my head as though they were a grand detective novel. Bennie and the Case of the Missing Sneaker, starring Toby as the faithful companion. We'd face all sorts of red herrings, from the closet to the attic to the basement, until finally solving the puzzle by remembering an earlier experiment. Maybe I'd even write it down as a short story someday. Time seemed to slip by in a pleasant blur, and before I knew it, the sun was going down, painting the sky with shades of pink and orange. Toby curled up beside me, snoring softly. I gently patted his head, feeling grateful for our day together. Yes, even the frantic searching parts. Life in Bennie's world is never dull, and that's just how I like it. Sure, I could do without losing things once in a while, but if I didn't lose them, I wouldn't have an excuse to go on these silly quests. Dinner time arrived, and I decided to celebrate by cooking a hearty meal. I made spaghetti and meatballs, which is one of my favorite comfort foods. This time, I kept track of every step in the kitchen. No losing utensils, no misplaced ingredients, and definitely no dropping any shoes into any appliances. I even joked with Toby, you see, I've got both shoes on my feet where they belong. He just wagged his tail, possibly hoping I'd toss him a meatball. Finally, as the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, I felt the warmth of a day well spent. I headed to my room, changed into comfy pajamas, and looked down at my sneakers neatly placed side by side. I made a silent vow never to lose them again, though knowing me, there's no telling what might happen tomorrow. But that's half the fun, isn't it? As I climbed into bed, I thought about how happy I was to still be able to share these moments with all of you. Bennie's world is a place where we can laugh at our mistakes, celebrate our victories, and learn something new every day, even if it's just a reminder to check the dishwasher when you're missing a shoe. I pulled the covers over me, ready for whatever dreams might come, and whispered a final good night to Toby, who was snoozing in his dog bed nearby. I drifted off to sleep with a smile on my face, imagining the adventures the next day might bring. After all, if losing a shoe could turn into such a hilarious and wacky ordeal, just think of what might happen when everything is actually where it's supposed to be. In Bennie's world, anything is possible. But for now, it's time to rest and dream of more silly escapades. Tomorrow is another day, and who knows, it might involve flying kites, baking giant cupcakes, or perhaps even searching for a lost sock, hopefully not in the dishwasher. Good night, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to Bennie's World.